Hey everyone, this is Seth. In this video, I'm going to talk about and demonstrate how to do some reverse coding and otherwise recoding values in Excel, SPSS, and R. Just to start off, you can skip to whichever one you're more interested in, or you can watch all three. But to start, let's just talk about what we're actually going to do, because I don't want to explain this 3 different times. So first, we've got, this is made up data. I just made an AI create a bunch of fake data. So we've got 50 different subjects of different ages, genders. We have 6 satisfaction scores, so that's satisfaction with something, I don't know what. 2 and 6 need to be reverse coded. Let's say those were items where a person responded, but a higher score would indicate that they have less of the attribute. So we need to flip it. So for example, if you're measuring sociability and you have an item that's like, I hate going to parties, that's probably going to need to be reverse coded because sociable people don't hate it very much. They're going to give low scores. We want to flip that around. These are all on a 1 to 5 scale, or they should be. So the way we're going to reverse code is to say we need a 1 to become a 5, 2 to become a 4, 3 to stay the same, 4 to become a 2, 5 to become a 1. Now, one way you can accomplish that is to just simply say whatever we're starting with, it's equal to our new cell, and regardless, it'll look a little different for SPSS and R, but it'll be some variation of this is going to be equal to 6 minus whatever the original was, because 6 minus 1 is 5, 6 minus 2 is 4, minus 3 is 3, so that doesn't change. 6 minus 4 is 2, and 6 minus 5 is 1. Now, you can memorize formulas for how to do these kinds of things, but I think it's easier to just sit there and think, what is my situation? How many points do I have? And just work through and figure out what would I need to do. And in this case, just subtract each value from 6, and you're going to get what you want. We also have a problem with the 5th satisfaction item. This happens to me a lot, especially whenever I'm using Qualtrics or something where I've screwed up the way that numbers are assigned somehow. And so whereas all these other satisfaction scores are coming out on a 1 to 5 scale, this one right here is coming out ranging from 23 to 27. So it's supposed to be 1 to 5, but they're coming out like this. They're coming out 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So 1 is supposed to be 23, 2 is supposed to be 24. And you would need to just go into your survey system and you could fix it there, or you could at least figure out what is supposed to refer to what. But I happen to know that 1 is supposed to be 23, and so on. And so what's happening here is each value is off by 22, because 23 minus 22, or actually, let's just say what's different. We started with 23, we ended up with 1, so what's the difference between those? So 23 minus 1, it's 22. Drag that down, 22. So each of these has just been knocked off by 22 points. So that should be an easy transformation. I just need to subtract 22 from each value in that column. Okay, then I'm going to calculate an average satisfaction rating based on these 6, but it needs to be based on these 2 being recoded, and it also needs to be based on a correct version of SAT5. Wouldn't actually, yeah, you're just going to want to change it because your interpretation is going to get ugly if you leave it in this other format. Then let's say we've got income here. This looks like it's probably dollars annually, US dollars annually. So let's say we want to go to monthly. Maybe it'd make more sense to go to weekly, but let's say we want to go to monthly. We're just going to divide this by 12 to get the monthly income. And then lastly, oh, you know what? There's associate, bachelor, master, and doctorate. So there's actually, it looks like 4 different possibilities here. So we'll recode those as 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just say that that's useful for some reason. Now there are different ways to accomplish all of these tasks in each of these programs. I'm just going to give you examples of ways that you can do it and ways that immediately pop into my head to do it. So with that, you can either start watching or skip forward to the section you care about. I'll start with Excel, then I'll go to SPSS, then I'll go to R. Okay, so reverse coding 2 and 6. You can actually just change the values that are here. What would be the most horrible version of this would be if you were like, okay, 5 becomes a 1, 3 stays the same, 4 becomes a 2, 3 stays the same, 2 becomes a 4. Like, that's kind of a nightmare, and if you have hundreds of data points, thousands of data points, it's an irresponsible use of your own time. So don't do it manually, step by or in a piecemeal fashion. But also, you could change the actual values if you want. I like to insert a new column and say this is going to be sat to R, so reverse coded. That way I've got kind of my original version, the raw scores, but then I've also got the version I'm going to include in my calculations, and that way I can kind of just see the steps. For me, that's what makes sense, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so this is going to, in Excel, we're going to say this is equal to 6 minus whatever the original value was, so 6 minus 5 becomes 1. Then let's just drag that down, grab the bottom right corner. That should stay a 3, and it does. 6 minus 4 is 2, 6 minus 3 is 3. So it's working correctly, and we can just drag that down. Okay, so those have been reverse coded. Let's do that as well for the 6th satisfaction item, so sat 6R. And you know what? Let's just copy. I'm just going to copy all of those, all that I just had over here. Oh, wait, that's wrong. I just copied the wrong column. I want to copy the one that has the formula. So highlight the cells you're interested in, hit copy. Then when you paste over here, it's updating. Before we were operating based on these two cells. When you paste it over here, you can see, that it's operating based on these two cells now. So 6 minus 4 is 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. 6 minus 5 is 1. Okay, so we got our reverse coded values. That's pretty nice. We need to fix the problem here. How do we want to do this? One way to do it would be, let's just, you know what? Let's just make another column. There's different ways you might do it. But let's just say this is going to be sat5 star because it's asterisk. It's been corrected now, and this is my version that's no longer correct. But let's see. We just need to take this and then so the value 26, for example, and we need to subtract 22. It's 22 points too high, so to fix it, we're just going to subtract 22. So 26 becomes 4. 27 should become 5, right? Good, good, good. Yeah, just drag it down, grab the bottom right corner and drag it down. Now all of those have been fixed. 23 becomes 1, 27 becomes 5, and that's looking the way that we want it to. So we fixed whatever that problem was. I genuinely don't even know how I screw that up in Qualtrics, but I do it regularly. So it's good to know how to fix that. Okay, now we want an average satisfaction rating. We want a single value that represents the amount of satisfaction a person has. Maybe we're going to correlate that or something like that. But let's just say this is sat_m for mean. So the mean satisfaction. I'm just going to say this is equal to average. So I'm using the average function. This calculates the arithmetic mean. And I'm going to highlight the cells that I care about. So I'm going to hold down the control button on, what is this, Windows. I think it's different on a Mac. Command, maybe. But yeah, I'm just going to click on the cells that I want. I want it to do sat1, reverse coded sat2, 3, and 4. Or actually, oh no, stop that. Sorry. Let's start that over. That you can highlight multiple cells simultaneously, and then as long as you're holding down that control, and I think command works on Mac, it should work. Close parentheses. So this says calculate the average of whatever's in this cell, these 3 cells, this cell, and that cell. If you wanted to type it out, you could say D2, comma, F2 through H2, comma, J2 and L2. That's going to give you, it's the same thing. Okay, so the average of those is 3. That's correct. Then let's drag it down, 3.5 here, 3.67. Okay, cool. So let's drag it all the way down using the bottom right corner, and we're getting these average satisfaction scores. Wow, very similar to 3. Definitely randomly generated. Everyone has pretty similar scores, or at least pretty similar average scores. Okay, cool. So let's see, what else do we need to do? We wanted to recode the income to be monthly. Okay, let's create a new column and let's call this income monthly, or something like that. You can call it whatever you want. This is going to be equal to whatever the original was. Then we divide by 12, right? 12 months in a year. So if you got 25,000 in a full year, you get a bit over 2,000 in just 1 month. Then we can just drag this down. Here's a quick spot check. 60 divided by 12 is 5, so 60,000 should come down to 5,000, so our formula is doing what we thought. Okay, just drag that all the way down, and there you go. We've got monthly income now. And then lastly, we said that we wanted to recode education to be 1, 2, 3, 4. For whatever reason, let's say we've got a good reason to do that. So let's just say ed numeral. We want it as a numeral for some reason. Let's see, how do we do? Okay, so one way we could do this is we have 4 options here. Let's use some if statements. Let's say this is going to be equal to if, open parentheses. So what this takes is some kind of logical test. If the result is true, it's going to spit out one thing, or if it's false, it'll spit out something else. So let's say if this cell Q2, column Q, row 2, if that is equal to associate, put that in quotation marks because it's a string, comma, and you can see it's moved on to the second part of the formula. It's like, what's the value if it's true? We want that to become a 1, comma. Now, if it's false, then we want to trigger another if statement. If, open parentheses, if this Q2 value is equal to bachelor, in quotes, comma, then give us a 2, comma. Now, what if that's false? Let's trigger another if statement. If that Q2 is equal to master, in quotes, then comma, give us a 3, otherwise give us a 4. Now, if we wanted for this last step, we could have said if Q2 equals doctorate, give us a 4, but there's only 4 options here. So if it's not associate, bachelor, or master's, it has to be a 4. So why even bother writing out the rest of the formula? Okay, so then close out those quotation marks. I think that's all of them. Yeah. Yep, there's my last quotation, or those are parentheses, aren't they? Let's call them what they are. Okay, so bachelor becomes 2. We should get 3, 2, 4, 2. If this is working correctly, 3, 2, 4, 2. Yep. Okay, so that is doing what we want, it looks like. Let's see, an associate should be 1. Yep. Okay, so it's doing what we want. Always make sure to double check and ensure you're getting what you expected to get. Okay, there you go. That's how we did these few examples of recoding and reverse coding in Excel. Let's jump over to SPSS and do the same thing. All right, so I've got the same data. Try to give ourselves a little room to work with. All right, let's see. First of all, we need to recode SAT2 and SAT6. There are different ways that you can do this. Maybe I'll show you. I'll show you a few different ways. Okay, so first of all, let's use transform, then compute. So clicking through the main use transform compute. What this does is it allows you to create a new column based on some kind of calculation, some kind of computation. Okay, so let's call this SAT2R. And this is, so reverse coded, and this is equal to, as we already know, our algorithm will be 6 minus the original, 6 minus SAT2. Or if you want, you can say 6 minus and then grab it from your list. Double click it or select it and then click the arrow. So it's going to be equal to 6 minus SAT2. Okay, sounds good. Let's just see what happens when we do that. it creates a new variable called sat2 reverse coded, and you see 5 became 1, 3 became stayed 3, 4 became 2, and so on. So that worked. Let's do it again for sat6. Transform compute. Again, this is not the only way to do this. This might be how I would do it. So let's say sat6 recoded, it's going to be equal to 6 minus, but then let's just say instead of subtracting whatever sat2 was, we're going to subtract sat6. So 6 minus 4 will become 2, 6 minus 2 will become 4, 6 minus 5 will become 1. Let's see if that's what we get. Yep. 4 became 2, 2 became 4, 5 became 1, 3 stayed the same. So we've reverse coded. We could also have done that using recoding. We'll come to that in a minute. I'll show you that as well. In fact, let's do that. Let's do that now. So for sat5, remember these are all 22 points higher than they should be. Let's, instead of creating a new column, let's go ahead and play with this recode. So let's recode into the same variable. This means we're going to change what shows up here, but it's going to stay in this column. So what are we changing? Sat5, the 5th satisfaction item. So, sorry, I'm doing things quickly. Grab what you want and throw it into this window over here, and then click old and new values. And it's like, okay, tell me what's old and then what it needs to change into. So old and new. So our old value of 23 needs to become a 1. Our old value of 24 needs to become a 2. And, okay, sorry, I'm going really fast. Old value is 24, new value is a 2, and then I click add, right? Then 25 corresponds to 3, and I click add. 26 corresponds to 4, add. 27 actually means 5, because each of these are 22 too high. We could also have done this using compute, right? We could have taken whatever it was and subtracted 22 from it, but this is a good way to do it as well. So add that. Now, anywhere you got a 23, that's going to be recoded into 1, 26 into a 4, etc. Hit continue, hit OK, and what we expect to happen is 26 should become a 4, 24 should become a 2, that should become a 5. So we should get 4 to 5. Yep, you can see the values changed. It didn't create a new column, it just changed them. So we got 4 to 5, and 3 stayed. Or no, 3 would have been 25. So yeah, that worked. Okay, so we have successfully fixed our problem with SAT5. Now let's calculate average satisfaction ratings for each person. Let's do this using compute. Yeah, let's use transform compute. And let's call this sat m for mean. This is going to be equal to, now you could write out the formula yourself, but you can run in, that can create some complications when you run into missing values and things like that. So I might actually just recommend that you go to function group, and I think statistical mean. Yeah, let's just make it calculate the mean. And you can see it's going to ignore invalid or missing values if that's what you want, which is often what I want. That you can debate that, but let's run with that. So double click that, and now you can see the format looks kind of like Excel actually, except instead of average it says mean, and then you put in whatever values you want it to calculate the average for. Okay, in the parentheses separated by commas. So first we want sat1, comma. Then we want reverse coded sat2, comma. Then we want sat3, comma, sat4, comma, sat5, comma, and reverse coded sat6. Now, out of curiosity, what happens if I try to send them all? Can I send more than one at a time? No, I can't. Okay, so the way I did it is how you do it. Okay, so the mean of 1 through 6 with 2 and 6 being reverse coded. Fantastic. This will create a new column. Let's scoot over and take a look at it. 3, 3.5, 3.67. Those were the values we got before. So this is working correctly. Okay, now we want to recode income to be monthly, just to keep showing different versions of things. Let's say Let's say that for this one, we're computing a new variable, and we're going to call this income month, or maybe inc month, and this is just going to be equal to the original income. This new variable is the original divided by 12, or you could hit it on the keys or click it if you don't want to type it. Okay, so income divided by 12. We have a new column showing up over here, which is the income divided by 12, and it's working correctly because 60,000 divided by 12 is 5,000, so we're seeing what we expect. And then our last task was recode education as 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just do it. Let's use recode into different variables. Let's see. Yeah, I'll show you recoding into different variables now. So what are we doing? Education level. So throw that into the window. And what our output is, the new thing that we want. Let's say, oh gosh, I haven't done this recently. I might screw this up. Let's call this ed numerals. And I can't remember name versus label. I'm not actually sure. So let's just try it and find out. Don't be afraid to try out new things, as long as you've saved your work up to this point. Okay, so old and new values. What's going to be turned into what? Let's see. We need associate to become 1. Add that. Old value of bachelor to become 2. Add that. Old value of master to become 3. And doctorate to become 4. Add that. Okay, so that is how it should recode. You can change some other fun settings, but let's just run with this. Let's see if this does what we want. It seems like I haven't done something right yet. Oh, okay. So after selecting name and label, hit change. Probably should have test ran this before showing you how to do it. Okay, so I think this is going to work, but let's just find out. And if I did it wrong, then we'll go back and figure out how to do it correctly. So I'm expecting a new variable. Yeah, so bachelor becomes 2, master's becomes 3, bachelor's 2, doctorate's 4, and associate should become a 1, and it did. Okay, yeah, so that works. So that created a new column, but it was based on recoding rather than computation. Because that's way easier than trying to come up with some complicated way to turn this into a mathematical calculation. Okay, there we go. So we've accomplished all 5 tasks in SPSS, and now we're ready to do whatever it is we might want to do with this data. All right, last but not least, my personal favorite. Let's see if we can do these same things in R. Let's see, first of all, I'm going to load a library called read Excel, which reads Excel files. Then the data is called fake data.xlsx. Let's go ahead and pull that up. I can do that using this function read Excel, which comes from the read Excel package. And let's say, yeah, let's just walk through this piece by piece. First, I need to find the path. So this data, I believe, and you're going to put the path in quotation marks. This data is in my C drive, C:/ and I have it in a file called R. And then the name of it is, oh, it's right there, fake data.xlsx. So that's my file path. Let's see if running this gives me what I want. Yep, that looks like, yep, this is all the stuff from that Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to work out of Excel, but I almost always For whatever reason, I have Excel, so I often will download the data into Excel, and then if I'm going to work in R, I pull it up using Read Excel. That's just sort of the process I like to use. Okay, now I don't want to have to do that over and over and over, so let's say data is equal to, oh wait, is data already something useful? Yeah, it is. What about dat? Let's call it, is dat anything? No, dat's nothing. Let's call it dat, that's our shorthand for data. This is dat gets that. Or as I would commonly say this, dat is now equal to this. We're assigning it. We're saying from now on, when I type dat, what I mean is go grab this Excel file. Okay? Now, at the end of my code, especially whenever I do an assignment like that, I like to say semicolon and then whatever the thing is that I assigned. That way I can check and see. It will simultaneously run it and tell me if I did it correctly. Okay, so what this says is assign dat to this process of grabbing that, and then just go ahead and show us what it is. So I run that, and yep, it's working correctly. It's showing me this tibble, which is a kind of table in R. Now, to run the code, you can highlight it and click Run. If you're on Windows, you can do Control-Enter. I've created, or actually, I think maybe everyone, I don't know if this is a shortcut I made if everyone can do it, but Alt-Enter just runs a line without moving on to the next one. If you're on Mac, I think it's like Command instead of Control. Sorry, Mac folk, I don't know how your stuff works. But anyway, there we go. So we've got dat is now going to give us this Excel file. That's what we want. Okay, now we want to reverse code SAT2 and SAT6. So we can access those by saying dat dollar. The dollar sign, this says, let's just select one like SAT2. What this code says is all of this. It says, go read that Excel file and then look at a specific column called SAT2. So if I run this, it's just going to print out the results of this column. So 5, 3, 4, 3, 2. 5, 3, 4, 3, 2. Okay. Now I could just I could simply change what these values are. Let's do that. Let's just do that to start. Now, you won't always have these weird little back ticks. That happens whenever you've got something weird in the name. Like I gave it a little asterisk for some reason, I guess to remind myself I needed to reverse code it. But otherwise, like if we wanted to pull up SAT1, you can see it doesn't need that. The back ticks are just a way for R to know that it's like, oh, you're not trying to multiply something. That's just part of the dumb name you gave it. It's like, yeah, okay. Okay, so one way we could do it is we could just say it is equal to 6 minus itself. So I'm just going to copy paste. Semicolon, and then paste it again because I want to see what the result is. So this column, that SAT2 column, is equal to 6 minus itself. So if it was a 5, it becomes a 1. And then it says, when you're done with that, by the way, show me the result. So let's see what happens. 1 becomes 5, 3 stays the same, 4 becomes 2, 5 becomes 1, 2 becomes 4. This is working correctly. One problem with doing it like this is if you accidentally run this bit of code twice, you're going to change your result. So if I run it again, it flip-flops again. Like I've ran it several times, you can see it's 1, 5, 1, 5, because it'll just keep reverse coding if you keep doing that. So maybe one way that we would do it, we're back to the original now, 5, 3, 4, 3. I think that was the original, right? Yeah, 5, 3, 4, 3. So instead, maybe what we want to do is we want to say, instead of changing that column, let's create a new column called SAT2R. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to speak this into existence by saying, in this tibble, there is now a column called SAT2 reverse coded, SAT2R, and it is equal to 6 minus whatever the original was. So dat dollar SAT2 right there. Okay, so dat dollar sat to reverse gets 6 minus whatever the original was. Okay, so this is a new column that is equal to 6 minus whatever the original was. And I'll make it show us the output. Hopefully it's 1323 is how it starts out. Yep, 1323 is what we're getting. Okay, so that's working. Let's do the same thing for SAT6. And I'm showing you how to do things in a very piecemeal way. You'll come up with faster ways to do things. And there are packages that can do these kinds of things. But really, I think it's helpful when you're learning to code to do it step by step so you really understand what's going on. Okay, so now we're just going to change this 2 to a 6, and then here this to a 6. So I'm using the exact same code I just did, except I changed out all the 2's for 6's. Okay, now let's see. Let's take a look at the original real quick. The original was 42534. Okay, now we create this new column, which is 24132. 4 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 5 becomes 1, 3 stays the same. Okay, that worked. So we've got 2 new columns that are reverse coded. If along the way you need to check and see what you're getting so far, use a capital V for view and then say dat. And when we run that, it's going to show us kind of an Excel looking spreadsheet, and you can check and see. Okay, there you go, SAT2 and SAT6 reverse coded values. So we've got these 2 new columns happening. So that's nice. You can do that to check in and see where you're at periodically. We need to fix the problem with SAT5. As you'll recall, those values were 22 points too high. So let's say dat dollar SAT5. Now just think about it. Think about what you know. What would you plug in to reverse, or not to reverse code it, to change it? It's 22 points too high. So what we can do is we can say it's equal to itself minus 22 points. Okay, then I'll say semicolon and show me the result. So to start out, what do we have before I run any of that? We got 26, 24, 27, 25. So this should become 4, 2, 5, 3. 4, 2, 5, 3. Okay, let's run it all and see what we get. Yep, we get 4, 2, 5, 3. So that's doing what we expected. It just kept the column the same. And now notice I didn't create a new column. I actually made it change the SAT5. So this was a 26, now it's a 4. We could have created a new column if we wanted. It's really up to you and what you're trying to do. So, okay, we fixed that problem. Now we're going to calculate an average satisfaction rating based on the 6 that we care about. And we want that to be for each person. So for each row, there's different ways you could do this. One option, let's create a new column. So dat dollar sat in. So there's going to be a new column I'm speaking into existence called mean of satisfaction score, sat in. And we're going to assign that to be, let's use, one way we can do is using row means. So this function, this can be especially useful if you're doing, like, if you're working with matrices and things like that. But what it does is it will calculate the mean for each row, and that's kind of what I want. Notice you do have to capitalize that M, except I don't want it to do that for everything. I want it to do that for, okay, I only want it to do that for certain columns, 1, 3, 4, 5, and then the reverse 2 and the reverse 6. So, okay, so let's see what it wants. The input it wants is the data, and then you can do things like control whether missing values are removed and things like that. We don't have missing values, we're just keeping it simple. So, okay, so do this for dat. Now I'm going to do, I think we call this indexing, where we pull out some brackets. When you have brackets after an object, like this is a tibble, I think. What is dat? Yeah, dat is a tibble, like a type of data frame, a type of table, really. Okay, so we can use brackets with a comma to indicate what rows we're interested in or what columns we're interested in. So rows go before the commas, columns go after the columns or after the commas. So if we specifically only want to focus on certain columns, we can don't put anything in front of the comma, and then we can just say which specific ones we care about. So let me just write this out and then I'll interpret. So we don't just want one, we want a combination of things. So we're going to use the C function, and there'll be, let's see, we want sat1, comma, comma, we don't want sat2, we want sat2 reversed. Okay, comma, sat3, comma, sat4, comma, sat5, comma, and then this one, we don't want sat6, we want it to be the reverse coded one. Okay, so I think this will do what we want, but let's just interpret this code that I wrote. This says, this new column is going to be created, and it is equal to the mean for each row in this file or in this table, but not every column. So every row, but on the other side of that comma inside the bracket, we say only for this list of columns. Okay, and we put them in. We're combining or concatenating. We're bringing them together. It's an unfortunate word because it's used for multiple things. But yeah, separate the items by commas, and then make sure to close out all your parentheses and brackets. And then I think this is going to do what we want. Let's just check and see. I think the values, the means should be 3, 3.5, 3.67. Those should be the first three, as I recall. Yeah, I think this is working. So we got 3, 3.5, and 3.67. So these are the same values we came to by our other methods. So now let's just once again check and see, what are we getting? What does this look like? View, or not video, view dat, and let's just see what it looks like. Okay, yep, sat_im is a new column right here, which has the means for the correctly formatted items. Okay, now it's home stretch. Let's recode income as monthly rather than annually. Let's see, what do we want to do? Let's do, for this one, let's just actually change the values themselves rather than creating a new column. Whether that's a good idea or not is a separate argument. I just want to show you how to do it. So dat $income. Okay, so hit tab. So dat $income. That's now going to be equal to, copy, paste. It's going to be itself divided by 12. All right, then go ahead and show us what that looks like. There we go. So remember that 60,000 divided by 12 is 5,000, so that is working correctly. Remember, if you do it like this, if you run this code multiple times, it's going to keep dividing these values by 12, and you'll end up with incorrect information. We could have created a new one if we wanted. We could have said dat $income month equals this piece. If we did it like this would just create a new column that does that rather than changing the existing column. It's really up to you and how you like to work with data. Lastly, let's code education as 1, 2, 3, 4. There are different ways you could do this. Let's say, I'm trying to think, I get the way you would do this would depend on why you would even want to do this, but let's just do it like this. Let's say dat $education level is, we're going to assign that. So that is going to be, let's turn it into a factor. Let's just see, what is it right now? What is the class of this thing? It's currently characters. Okay. So let's turn it into a fact. Factors are what R calls its grouping variables. So these are groups. You could think of associate's degree, bachelor's degree. So factor, the inputs it wants, first it wants to get some data, then it wants the levels and their labels. So let's take that again. That's going to be, so we're saying it is equal to itself as a factor. Here are the levels. Levels are a combination of things. They are associate, bachelor, master, doctorate. Okay, and then the comma levels are, I'm running out of room. I normally like to keep things on a single line. So instead, I'm going to follow good practice for once and break things across vertical space. So the levels will be a combination of things, which are, can I just say 1 through 4? I think that'll work. Let's check and see what this does. I don't think it liked that. So let's try, oh, can I do it without the C? Sorry, I'm just gonna mess around with this and see if it works. No. Do I need to say 1, 2, 3, 4? No. What am I screwing? Oh, oh. So I said levels twice. This should be labels. Now let's see if it'll let me. I just want to try and see. I know this should work, but I want to see if it'll let me just do 1 through 4. Yeah, it will. Okay. So I could also have done a combination 1, 2, 3, 4. But since it's 1 through 4, you could just say 1 through 4. Okay, so this worked. We took that education column and we turned it into a factor where each of these levels is labeled 1 through 4. This is one way you could do it. So you see bachelor became 2, master became 3. Over here, this associate became a 1. And then you can see these are the levels. Whether this would make sense for what you're trying to do depends on what you're trying to do. But this is a way that you could recode those values. Okay, so there you go. That is, I would switch back to the main screen, but that would probably blind you by going from dark to light, so I'm not going to do that. There you go. That's a relatively quick-ish walkthrough of how to recode and reverse code values in Excel, SPSS, and R. If you have questions or comments, shoot me an email. Otherwise, see you next time.